Okay, so this is the second of our series on Arnold Schoenberg and the 5 weekends of September. We're talking each evening about one or maybe two works of Arnold Schoenberg. I'm not going to give you a lot of history because you can look that up anyhow. What we can give you that you can't find on Wikipedia or in blogs and things like that is what happens when you listen to the music carefully. Because if you go to a concert, you just hear it. No second chance. If you have a recording and you play it, you can listen to it. But what to listen for, I think maybe I can help with. So tonight, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be performing Schoenberg's Opus 15, written in 1908 and 1909. 15 songs on the poems of Stefan George, Opus 15. And that one piece lasts about 20 minutes. I'll talk about it for a while. We'll take a break. You'll have refreshments. Then I'll come back. We'll have some questions, hopefully. I'll try to answer them. Then I'll talk about the piece some more. And then we will hear the whole piece again. That's the shape of the evening. And I think it's a good way to really get into this music. So our soloist for tonight, singing the songs, is Charlotte Khuner. She was raised in the East Bay here, mainly in Berkeley, just 4 blocks away. She received her BA, earned her BA in psychology and German from Goucher College in Maryland. And while there, she participated in their opera program and sang Gretel and Hansel and Gretel and the title role in Puccini's Suor Angelica. Then she got a Fulbright scholarship to go to Germany, which was what she always wanted to do. And she has now taken up student residentship there. She's enrolled in the master's degree program at in opera performance at the prestigious Berlin University for the Arts. That's where she also earned an earlier degree there. She has sung, however, with Bay Area companies before and during her time in Germany. With West Edge Opera, my own company, she sang in Gianni Schicchi and the Manga Flute. With Island City Opera, she sang Lisa in La Sonnambula. More recently, in Berlin, she has sung the title role of Anne Frank, an opera by Grigory Fried. That's a monodrama. Her voice teachers there in the United States and in Germany have been Jennifer Blades, Betty Ridgway, and currently Deborah York. And now I also want to tell you that you can find her performances online, full performances of an entire opera in which she is featured that we produced in 2020. And it was a kind of political or polemical piece having to do with that election, and it's relevant also now. It is called The Deceiver of Citizens. It's composed by Michael Centuria, and Charlotte sang the role of Innocence. So, Innocence may have something to do with our song cycle today as well. So, let's get to it. Charlotte Khuner singing the Book of the Hanging Gardens.
Schutz von dichten Blättergründen, wo von Sternen feine Flocken schreien, sachte Stimmen ihre Leiden künden, Vogeltiere aus den Brunnen schlünden, strahlen in die Marmorbecken schreien,
Okay, I've made a few notes so we can have a kind of guided tour now of these pieces. As I said, these are poems by Stefan George, who was alive at the time Schoenberg was writing these songs. There's a whole batch of poetry that he published in the 1890s. And amid that batch, there was a group that was called the Book of the Hanging Gardens. Those were 31 poems, and out of those 31 poems, Schoenberg picked 15 that are consecutive within that, not beginning with the first, not ending with the last, but the ones that really told the story. And in the whole set of poems, there is a rich person, a king or a prince or somebody who is evidently in the Middle East and is visiting this fabulous place, one of the wonders of the ancient world, and falls in love and writes this love poetry. So this fictional ruler becomes, in this version, just an ordinary person. There's hardly any mention, maybe just once, there's mention of something which would indicate his class. But it's a long episode of an unhappy love affair in a very strange environment. And I think that Schoenberg was unconsciously attracted to this because the poet, let's call him Stefan, all right? Rather than saying the poet every time, we'll just say, pretend it's autobiographical, and maybe partly. Stefan is going into another world and having these great experiences, but then it doesn't always turn out well. It's fraught with danger. Schoenberg was doing the same thing in his life. He was embarking on an artistic project, following his instincts, going where his path led him to a strange new world. And he knew at the time that it was dangerous. Not physically dangerous, but people might not like the music that he was writing. And in fact, this piece was not well received, and the next one that he wrote, the second string quartet, was definitely met with scandal when it was first performed. So he loved being there, he was in love with the material, but he knew that that relationship would bring him problems. So there's an identity between the poet and the composer here. Maybe that's why these pieces come across as very sincere and very full of expression from the inside. So, the story. Stefan is first entering this magic world. There are walls around it. He goes into the gardens, and he sees, it's a starry night. He sees the stars, looks like they're falling in flakes. He sees strange vegetation all around. He sees a fountain. He sees marble figures. He sees these mythical beasts with water flowing out of their mouths. He sees all these things. And then he somehow manages to make an entry. His footsteps take away. So let me illustrate what Schoenberg is trying to get at here. He wants to portray not the way the place looks really, but what that look makes somebody feel like, what the atmosphere is. So it's nighttime. You can hardly distinguish anything, and here's what he writes, the introduction. It really doesn't go anywhere, and then suddenly you might catch a glimpse of something going on. Maybe take the first footsteps into it. Then, uh-oh. So it's quiet, it's kind of foreboding. So is that scenery? I'm not sure it's really scenery, it's internal scenery. So the next thing we get is that Stefan actually says where he is, in the protection of a thick foliage where the stars are falling, and there's a whispering, strange whispering in the air. You don't see real people, but you hear whispering. This is the first vocal entrance of the cycle.
Unterm Schutz von dichten Blättergründen
already you hear not just that the voice is saying it's a strange place, but there are things happening. These little figures, which is a hallmark of Schoenberg's writing, he'll write a legato passage smooth, and then a little figure will catch the eye. There are certain painters that do the same thing. There's a canvas, but there's little moments in the canvas that you see. The other details that you might hear are something like this. A little cascade, a small, soft cascade of notes, or some chords which don't lead anywhere but are doing something. Notice the convention that Schoenberg uses is not that a chord goes to another chord and resolves, it's that a chord moves stepwise and develops into a territory that's new. That chord stretches, stretches more, stretches more. All these chords are dissonant. The second chord, less so. Sorry. That's a normal chord, but stretches more. So we're stretching into unknown territory. Then the climax of the song happens when, after looking at the scenery, something personal catches his attention. There are real people. There's something going on. Somebody's doing something. Namely, there are lighted candles and there are figures moving. It's a ritual of some sort. That catches his eye and spurs his emotion. So this is now, I'll do just that very moment where he says, candles arrived, okay? And then comes to rest. Now listen to these last two chords. There's a chord that's somewhat dissonant, and it resolves to something more consonant, but it's still hovering. I'll play that again. This motive, which has happened in the very beginning, it means I hear something's going to happen. Happens at the end, echoed, subsiding. So there's a feeling of ending. I mean, structurally in the piece, you have the feeling, oh, we got to the end, but we didn't get to a tonal arrival point. Now, if you were here last week, all the piano pieces don't have any kind of harmonic solidity at the end. This starts off by having some kind of harmonic rest, but not a complete rest. All right, that's song number one. The mood continues in song number two. Now it seems to be the next morning, it's daytime, and he can see more what's going on in this enclosure where the gardens are. A lot has to do with the water and the birds. There's vegetation, and he calls it a paradise. So now he knows that it's a wonderful place to be. He's drawn that conclusion anyhow, and he talks about the storks making ripples in the water by wiggling their beaks in the water. And then he'll talk about the birds on the rooftops making soft noises. So here are the storks, and you'll hear a kind of complicated rippling effect. Nothing definite, just the feeling of rippling. This is a Schlankenstürzer, right? Okay. And in this song, again, his thoughts, looking at this place, get interrupted by something that suddenly hits them in the brain. Sometimes it's a sudden thought about something else. Sometimes it's something that he sees. In this case, it's a memory. Oh, I forgot. I'm only thinking about one thing. I'm obsessed by something. He doesn't tell you what it is. He just song ends just, but my dream is following one thing. So the grass is waving. Can we do Und die goldenen Binsen? The grass is waving and suddenly remembers, uh-oh, I have one thing on my mind. Better think about that. Okay, it's okay.
Und die goldenen Binsen säuseln.
right? And then that one thing he's dreaming about, he goes off into a dream. We don't know what he's dreaming, except the next poem tells us that he was walking. He was on a long journey, walking and walking. Nothing bothered him. He wasn't thinking about anything special. Certainly nothing aroused him to amazement when he saw her. He saw that glance. And once he saw her, he's suddenly totally enraptured, and he's imprisoned, and he says immediately, "Oh, have pity on me." So this is a guy who evidently is a little bit, what is the word, bipolar. It really is. So the music starts off by his marching. Here he is marching along. Ba-dum, he's marching along. Suddenly, he sees her and immediately says, "When I saw you, all I can think of is have pity on me and take me to be your slave." Okay, that's just what I would say. Notice the piano was walking while he was pleading, like, "I've walked here, please, let me feel like I've arrived." And at the end of the song, it sounds like he's saying, I don't have to walk anymore. I think I've found what I'm looking for, but maybe not quite. Listen to the ending. It marches, it slows down, and it ends on a very strange chord. Oh, sorry. It feels like he hasn't gotten anywhere, hasn't resolved, but the chord is actually a tonal chord. So as if he was going, as if he was ending, but the position of the chord makes you realize that it's a big question mark. I'll play it again. That's song number 3. All right, song number 4. He says, I was looking, and suddenly I saw her. I caught her gaze, and it seemed like she was looking at me too, and maybe she was trying to tell me something. So here he is, still outside. He's obviously infatuated. He's been stalking her, maybe, I don't know, but he finally catches her eye, and there's a nervous, somewhat aimless quality to this, as if he's wandering around hoping he's going to meet her. You get the feeling that the music is providing background, even plot background, in terms of emotional progress to what the poem is actually saying. Okay, this is Da meine Lippen. Notice we ended on a nice harmony, momentary stability, and then it goes off again. And this melody is wandering, sort of wandering around. It's not really going to anything. And now he sees her glance and says, "This is the glance that I've been kneeling to. In other words, I've been worshiping you, and finally I get to actually see you and have you look at me." All right, Das Schönes. All right. The same melody, somehow it sounds more definite, like I found it. Before it was, but when it's sung loud with determination, you get the feeling that the same feeling is now going to be answered. The fourth song, that was the fourth song. The fifth song, Stefan, I'm calling him Stefan, asks, this is a song we sang for you last week. He says, tell me where she's going to be on the path. I want to meet her again. And I'll go and I'll put on my best clothes and I'll pick flowers and I'll go and I'll put my face down so she can walk on me. So first let's hear the chords. Suddenly it's much more romantic now. He really has romantic hopes. And the music goes da, 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 which is typical 19th century talk for, oh, really? Yes, I'm sighing. Okay? It's almost like a jazz progression, right? The melody is stepwise motion. Ti-da, ta-da, ti-da-da, ti-da. All right, now we'll demonstrate. This is, tell me what path she's walking on. Sag it.
Saget mir, auf welchem Pfade heute sie vorüberschreitet.
Right, that's it. And now we'll go where he says, I'm going to go there and have her walk on my face. And at that point, this abasement of himself, Schoenberg said, by putting the voice in the basement. Drops the voice very, very low. I should say that most of the time, this, because of the tessitura, the range of the voice of all these songs is on the low side, is sung by mezzo-sopranos. But I think it has a especially pungent effect when a soprano sings it and is in the lower part of the voice, which has a feeling of somehow more physical things going on, rather than, I'm singing a song for you. I have something I've experienced. It's more like that. So this is the very end of the song, Shema, right? So it's, where am I doing here? So while the voice is going in the basement, the thought of the poet is still sighing for her. All right, song number 6. So far, Stefan hasn't actually met his beloved. He's seen her, talks about her. And now he actually says, I can't bear it anymore. I have to have her. I have to touch her. And he says it in this way. He says, I can't do anything anymore. I'm no business for me. I should be doing stuff, in the real world, and I can't really do it. So what I can do, however, is think of her in my imagination and invent while I'm asleep in my dreams. I can invent a conversation. And here he is spinning out a beautiful conversation. And this is not a conversation. It's just the feeling of moving together, having a relationship like your first date where you're spinning things along. Little lines that go somewhere, little bits of thought. I'll do that again. By the way, all these things that I'm playing, they don't come back. Most of them, they're little moments of feeling that's that particular moment, how somebody feels. The next one is, and I can earn money, or I could serve and get paid, right? Which is, that's something very definite. I'll establish my worth. It's not clear from the poem whether he means I'll establish it with her or I'll just do a great business and keep on with my life. But he says, I can't do any of that because it's not, all I can do is do it in my imagination because I'm no good for real life anymore. I just sit home and binge watch, whatever. And then at the end of the song, he says, but I got to wake up. And the worst thing is that I have to wake up in the morning. When the cold morning comes and washes away all those thoughts. So this anger that he had comes back as at the end when he's being woken up. So that's what we'll do, just talking about the morning. And again, the voice goes very, very deep down in depression. Okay? Right. Now he's experiencing a roller coaster of emotions. Anger, or anxiety, and hopelessness, and fear. And this is very stark in the next song, these dissonant chords. Right? And there's no, we've had these nice rich chords or complicated things. This is just stark. One hand only is played, and right in the vocal range. There's a lot in this song cycle that has to do with obsession. And Schoenberg's developed musical ways of portraying that, and we'll have a few more of them later on. All right, so let's just do the opening 4 bars. Angst. Go ahead. Right. It's a kind of primal scream. However, it's not just that kind of hyped up anxiety. It's also this feeling of loneliness and alienation. And the last line of the song is, I can't even be with my friends. I take no consolation in my friends. I don't want to. It's a real depressive feeling. So this is the very end. Das ich keines. Still dissonant chords, and the first 2 chords, it's an echo of the beginning. It was very angry at the beginning, and at the end it's hopeless. So these dissonant harmonies can be used to project different kinds of feelings. All right, so he's got to have her, he says. All right, this is not when he actually says, if I don't get you today, I'm going to explode. That's literally what he says. And how is this portrayed? This is portrayed with his being somewhere that needs relief. That's a chord that needs to resolve. This chord should resolve maybe to, and it almost does. But at the beginning, or these are all chords which are known for having no tonal location because they're equidistant. There's no scale steps to define a key. So this chord doesn't go anywhere. Debussy used it all the time to get his pictorial effects of things floating. And in this case, it has to do with unresolved feeling. If you do it fast enough, you get this, and the voice does that at the beginning, saying, if I don't touch your body today, I'm going to burst like a overtaut string, okay? Right? So this fast figure, now it becomes obsessive. This figure, he's feeling it, but it's not going anywhere. And here's how it sounds. This other motive that happens goes da-da, da-da. He's very nervous. So it's put the 2 together, and you get this obsessively repeats over and over. That's what I'm talking about, obsessive. This kind of, in music, it's called a perpetual mobile, or idée fixe, you might call it. And now he bursts out at the last part, saying, "I need to be relieved." But he doesn't sing a melody. It's like a siren going by. So here's the ending of the song. Notice the piano's doing the same thing. Ba, 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 ba. So the whole thing, in just a few seconds, is a really deep portrayal of this kind of obsession, violent obsession. So he wants to touch her, and apparently he got through to her, because Stefan now in the next song talks about, oh, it's too bad. Even when we are happy, it doesn't really work because one kiss is not enough. It's just like trying to find relief, the hot sands of the desert. One drop of water just goes, psst, and that's the end of it. It just leaves you hotter after that. So this is a frustrated guy. But he starts off, after this, next song, suddenly everything's beautiful. Yearning, but somehow beautiful. Now here's a real yearning melody. It has a jump in it, but it wants to go. We had that last week. I was talking about these chromatic, little tiny steps leading somewhere, but if you put them in a different, it has both a feeling of distance and a feeling of proximity in it. So that's the romantic melody. And the voice sings that, was vermocht, right? And one. By the way, that chord we ended on, that's a standard Schoenberg chord that is not dissonant, but it's not resolved. It's more, so he has this, you can have different levels of dissonance, something that's very dissonant, something that's more consonant, something that's more dissonant, resolving to something that's more consonant, resolving to. You do have within these dissonances a hierarchy, which for the time being Schoenberg was using. So you had different levels of satisfaction, dissatisfaction, yearning, and relief. So that motive that I was playing, that this da, gets developed in this whole song. The next time when you hear it, you'll hear that da-da-da, dee-da-da, and it can be very disruptive, or it can be yearning, or it can be explosive. At the very end, it almost erupts and then fades away. And then fades. Now, song number 10. I've got to stop. Okay. Now, so he's had one kiss. The next song doesn't say what's happening, but it says where he is. Symbolic. It's a very symbolic song, probably the most symbolic of all of them. And Stefan George felt himself to be a symbolist. He is in the garden, and he sees these beautiful flowers, and they're luscious, and they're ripe fruit. And then suddenly he thinks of her mouth, and her mouth has a beautiful flavor to it, has a sweet aroma to it, and it's luscious, and it's inviting. So this is clearly the feeling that physical intimacy is just around the corner. If physical intimacy, meaning fulfillment, completion, is around the corner, the chords should show you that maybe we're going to arrive at something we can rest on. So here's the opening. What do you know? That's a standard 19th century progression. Moves away. Even more resolved, but only in passing, because we're actually not there yet. I'll play the whole thing now. Okay. Now we're going to go to the end where he talks about her sweet mouth, and you'll hear at the end of the song, it almost resolves, like we're almost together now, and then it kind of fades away and goes dull or blank or smeary or unfocused somehow. This is von einem, okay? Resolving. No. So, is he going to get her or not? I'll tell you after the break. Let's take a break, and we'll come back and find out what kind of an ending it has. It's question and answer time. A lot of these questions, there aren't that many, which is fine because we have more music to get to talk about. But they're questions for Charlotte. 1, 2. I'll answer one question that's not for Charlotte, and then we'll get on to the questions for a major performer. Question: who were Schoenberg's major influences? How was he aligned with art movements of the time? Dada, Surrealism, and so on. Well, Schoenberg's major influences were not painters. There were other composers, mainly the earlier composers, Brahms and Wagner. And for purposes of songs, also Hugo Wolf and Robert Schumann. He was self-taught, and he studied then with Alexander Zemlinsky, who was a modernist composer.
Oh. Sorry.
The artists that he was aligned with were, I don't remember the Blauer Reiter movement. He was, I would say aligned is a good word, with Gustav Klimt and Oskar Kokoschka, little with Paul Klee. And he published in the Blue Reiter, Blau Reiter, he actually published some of his works in the same issues as they were talking about their art and reproducing paintings and poems and so on. But the expressionist, his music was termed expressionist, and he was in a way aligned with the artistic expressionist movement, although they actually were not his closest artistic friends. Dada, I don't think he was interested in at all. Surrealism, no. This is a little earlier. We're talking about 1890s. He did paint, actually. He did become a painter himself between about 1900 and 1910, 1915. You can look this up on Wikipedia. You'll find some very interesting things that happened with his marriage and other painters and so on. So I'll lead into talking with Charlotte. This question is it possible to sing this music without absolute pitch, without perfect pitch?
Well, I do not have perfect pitch, so yes.
So how do you go about singing it? How do you find out what your pitch is?
Oh my God. Well, you just practice it way more times than you think you would need to do it, and it just ingrains itself in your ear as a melody. Like it becomes a melody somehow. Yeah.
Next question for Charlotte. Great work memorizing this piece. When you're performing...
Thank you.
This is really interesting. When you're performing this particular piece, how do you think about the intervals you're singing?
I don't think about the intervals specifically because it's in my ear to the point where I don't have to think, okay, minor third and anything like that. I don't know. It's in my ear.
In other words, the music has a meaning without the calculation. The calculation might be part of your preparation, but once you learn the melody,
Right.
it has its own shape, its own flow, which you don't think about mechanically. Next question, and last question. Can you discuss how hard or easy it is to project the text in these songs? Now, there are two sides to that. One is the enunciation of the words with good diction, and the other one is project the meaning. I'm not sure which is the interrogator wants to know about more. But why don't you talk about both of those?
Oh, okay. Well, I would interpret that, first of all, as a question about pronunciation, enunciation. And the biggest challenge with that is the range, the tessitura in which the text appears. So you kind of spit out all the consonants as much as you can. But some of the lower stuff, if the piano is also really loud, I just tried to do my best with really spitting it out. Really, you know. The meaning of the text is ambiguous. The text itself is very ambiguous in a lot of ways. Oh. Hello. Okay. I don't know. I'm losing my signal. I have to enunciate. So I came up with my own interpretation, and then talked to other people about their interpretations, some poetry experts, and my dad, of course, and to try and agree on one interpretation for the both of us for this. But you can always, you could make changes to that. Is that a good answer?
Yes, I think as in many dramas and operas, what the words say is the surface, and the background, the backdrop, the subtext has to be agreed upon by everybody who's playing the piece together. In this case, it's just the singer and the pianist. That subtext tells a story that the words are only, in this case, only vaguely referring to. Everything that I'm saying about the plot, somebody else might say something different. But to make it work for us, we decided to develop a real storyline. And that leads us back to the piece, which we're going to talk about now, what the words say and what's actually going on. So, good news. Good news, the guy got the girl. Bad news, he still isn't fulfilled. We're on to piece number 11 out of 15. This song, after this, the one we went through just before the break, was this feeling of sensuality and just about to taste the fruit. Now he's evidently tasted the fruit, but the mood somehow it becomes desiccated. It becomes pessimistic. It's like he's disappointed. It's not quite clear why there is this bleakness in the air. But it's describing, the poem for piece number 11 is describing a long night of intimacy. Everything in the piano is understated, as if there should be feelings that I'm not feeling. It's not exactly numb, but it's definitely has the emotional bottom has dropped out of all the striving that we heard in the other songs. He says, when we're together, were we happy or did we just imagine it? I remember that we were fragile and that if we just touched each other, there was a shiver. So there was electricity there. And we cried, but we stayed together a long time. So it's an interesting memory to have of a relationship.
Wait, I have an example. This is an example of where the text is ambiguous. It doesn't say we cried, it said our eyes were running, and they're in the flower bed. So one interpretation could be that they just have allergies.
All right, let me show you the bleakness of piece number 11. It starts like this. There's a melody. Which is going to come back later on as a kind of symbol of a lost relationship. There's a minor chord and a major chord. This has shades of Gustav Mahler, because this very often, that change between minor chord and major chord being really happy and minor chord being really sad is important. Well, here the melody shows that. Is it sad or is it happy? The left hand plays this. The figure that just dribbles off, kind of desolate. Next chord. It has some kind of flavor to it, but what? Goes away and back. So this is the opening of the song. I would say it's bleakness and emptiness. The piano also explores registers. You know, when something is wide and empty in the middle in music, composers use this a lot in the 20th century to show something that is vast but empty, you know. You get the feeling, oh yeah, very high, very low, but where's the middle? Where's the stuff of it? In this case, here are the extremes. Very wide space. And here's the question that Stefan asks. Were these imagined happinesses? And there's one very important factor here. I won't ask you to respond, but think what is it about this one line that's different from almost the whole rest of the song cycle? So what is it about that? It's alone. The voice is unaccompanied. This doesn't happen hardly at all in this piece. The piano is always busy helping somehow. Here the piano doesn't help at all. The voice is left totally alone. And it says sehr ruhig, very quiet, almost resigned. By the way, when the voice ends, the piano comes in. Remember of the other song? This is almost the same musical moment, but in great loneliness. Then the voice goes, that kind of signature tune about am I happy, am I sad? So, the next song, number 12, you have new optimism or pleasure competing, dueling with this pessimism. So it has both the elements, and this song has more of that dichotomy than other songs in the cycle. It has both the legato, melodious part, and these wisps of strange desolation mixed in. The opening phrase, there are two phrases. One is loud and a little less satisfied. Answered. They're both it's not tonal music, but one is more towards I can't stand it, and the other towards, well, that's the way it's going to be. So in this song, he's saying, we're together, and we're having so much pleasure together. We're touching each other. We're admiring each other. It's great. So please, don't talk about the fact that if they discovered us, we'd be killed, and that the sand outside the door is waiting to drink our blood. Where does this fear come from? Nothing else in the song cycle has said, I'm afraid to be in love with her because I'm an intruder, or I don't belong here, or she belongs to somebody else. There's one line that says that she's in he's
walked into the
domain.
a domain of a different
Lord.
man,
Lord, right. So he definitely feels like he's a foreigner, but this is the first time, like he said, we could be killed, right? So this is the last line of this song, number 12. And this way of saying it, there's no fright in it. It's just a bleakness to it. And the bass gets lower, 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 lower. But it has this feeling of dread. If I played, you'd say, oh yeah, I know that. But in this case, it's this chord. Or rather, even buried so deep you can hardly tell the notes. But it's this tragic end. We might suffer a terrible end. All right, so here's the lead into that. Und nicht, right? Remember, that song started about, oh, we made love all night, you know? So, I don't know, maybe he's too negative for her, maybe he's too bipolar, whatever it is, he never talks about, you know, what's wrong with him. It's always just why things aren't working out, you know? It's typical male. So in this case, he doesn't complain exactly, but he says, you know, I was in the boat, and you were on the bank, and I was inviting you to come to the boat with me. And what were you doing? Oh, you were smiling, and you were comfortable and leaning, and you were playing with your jewelry, and you didn't come into the boat with me. And then he says, and then when I look all around, what do I see? I see these wilted flowers. I see these dead flowers on the water. And the flowers drooping. So this nature is reflecting this wilting love affair. But the music is, again, very bleak. Listen to this chord. Like this. Right? And then they kind of hang in the air, dissonant. Then there's some activity on them. And then some kind of motion that doesn't go anywhere. Chords that have, again, hovering. Chords that have more pregnancy. And ends. Again, here's this little ostinato, idée fixe. Perfect way of expressing something's dying and I'm not sure what. So, the voice part doesn't do as much in that song as the piano. So we're skipping on to song number 14. Now we're firmly in the idea that everything is dying. If my heart is dying, then everything is dying, right? So in this case, he says everything's dying. But he doesn't say everything is dying. He says, don't talk about the fact that everything is dying. As if somebody else were saying that it's dying, or as if he's trying to get himself not to think about the aspect of it. He wants to be optimistic, but he can't. Here, in this last song, second to the last song, there's a bit of tone painting in the sense that what he's talking about are things like leaves blowing in the wind, winter winds coming, and dragonflies being blown about, candles flickering because of the wind, about to be extinguished. And the gestures in the piano are wispy. That's the best word I can use. They're like this. Or. They're all da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da, and at the very end, like that. There's another, remember that yearning motive? Well, now that love is wilted, and it only comes out like this. Again, instead of, which would be full of energy, it's just drifting away, triple piano. Sorry. So the whole song has this attitude of nothing's going to survive. But it has a lilt to it. And it's very interesting that it doesn't say, oh, everything's dying. It says, oh, please don't say that everything's dying. So here's the beginning of the song. Okay, the song is so short, it's easy to just go ahead and sing the whole song. Now, at the end of the song, as I said, there's this wisp that comes up. Well, there's nothing to resolve to, but the feeling of ta, and now we arrived at that last note, ties right into the last song where you get that melody of minor. Remember? We get. So this last song, number 15, is by far the longest song. It recalls the unhappy love affair, recalls some of the motives of the previous songs, and it has the long lines of regret. I can only call it that emotionally, regret. Then there's a long introduction. I'll play part of it now. I would say it's a heavy mood. And that melody is going to come throughout the song and also at the very end. Besides that, he's at the edge of the gardens about to leave. So it mirrors the first song. The first song he was at the gate about to enter. Now he's at the gate about to leave. And he looks around and he doesn't see rich foliage. He just sees that everything is dying. He sees that there are prickly palms, and when he walks, he's getting pricked by the palms. He's bogging down in the marsh. So Schoenberg sets it, as I said, pictorially. Here are the prickly palms. At the same time, there's this sad melody. And remember, I play this melody? Well, it droops down to the bass. And I have to say, that's also very unusual for this song cycle. He doesn't usually take a melody that's been sung or played in a higher register and then just plunge it down to the lowest registers and echo. But he's trying to show the dismal feeling. But there are also, as I said, objects in the way of coming and of going. And these things that are these obstacles get portrayed by together with the music of the prickly stuff, we get the and builds up into a big climax of unpleasant feeling, unpleasant sensation. And that's the climax of this song. He had recalled briefly the happiness that they had had. He says, we were together at nighttime, and it's apparently nighttime now again, And, but now it's all over. It's true that she's gone forever. The flowers and water are disintegrating. I falter in the boggy grass. The palms stab me with their spiky fingers. All right, and we are going to now play that progression, which is not just resigned, it also is really fighting against it. So it starts with Nun ist wahr. Now it's true that she's going forever. At the very end of this song, that is the end of the whole song cycle, there is a really interesting kind of anti-resolution. It's not that it feels unresolved in the sense of you have an expectation that isn't being fulfilled. It's more that things are hanging without direction. And it's not that things come to a complete stop. You do have the feeling of arrested energy, but that energy is not leading to a goal. And this is something that's very hard to do with tonal music. Like you either have arrived at the key center, or you haven't arrived, and there's a definite feeling of a difference between the two of them. But this ending, which I'll show you now, that doesn't happen. The music fades away on a note that has no meaning. Literally, it's not part of a structure that would lead one way or the other, or a chord which has a real color to it. A lot of these chords I've been playing have real colors to them. But the chord that it ends on is this. It really doesn't, in the context here, does not have anything. It's a recap of the melody and then the ending. And it's written triple forte, like the loudest marking of the whole cycle. So obviously it's very emotionally intense. It's the same melody as at the beginning. So far, like the beginning. And the direction is, I'm playing a lot of notes, and then one by one, the notes are released. They stop, 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 to your left with one note, nowhere in particular. It's like he walks out of the garden and he doesn't know where he is. It ends with a kind of limbo feeling. As is difficult to achieve, and most composers don't want that. They don't want their pieces to end in limbo. They want to have arrived at some kind of definite emotion. But this is a very modern piece. As a matter of fact, Schoenberg was very proud of it and felt, now I've finally written the kind of music I want to write, where things just come naturally, intuitively, and my materials work in that direction, and I can say what I have to say without working it out, without having to develop motives or think about themes. He's exaggerating a little. He does still think about motives. But there is this feeling that it's not planned. It just happens. So that's how the song cycle ends with, in the middle, from the beginning to the end, there are all these things about tendencies, wanting to resolve, painting colors. And I think when you listen to it again, you'll be able to hear more. I hope you hear more about what the stuff of the music is that's going along with the poetry. And hopefully the poetry won't be opaque either. So now we will perform the cycle one more time for you.
des Mondes sich verirren.